Hi guys, so we've just finished another project and I'm excited to show it to you. It's a 2022 G63 G-Wagon with 16,000 miles and we've converted it into a full-fledged 6x6. Let's take a look at it from all angles.
Caution, carbon's hot. You got to give me all you got. Caution, carbon's hot.
You got to give me all you got. Caution, content's hot. You got to give me all you got.
I think many of my viewers know that in 2024, the factory released 6x6 G-Wagon came out, priced at $1.5 million. But I believe that over time, this price will increase because they only made a few, and apparently they have already sold out. Over time, I think the price will exceed $2 million, as is typical with such exclusive cars. So I immediately suggested to our client, let's build the same G-Wagon as the factory version. But he wasn't really into it. In fact, many of my clients felt the same way. They thought it just didn't look great. So we decided to go with the same body style as the older models from 2013, 2015, and 2017. We replicated those same forms but on a 2022 model, and I have to say, I really love the G-Wagon we built. The lines are just stunning, and the new body with its rounder shapes is fantastic. We'll take it out on the road, and I'll show you how it looks from all angles, so you can see for yourself how amazing it stands out among other cars. But first, let me give you a quick rundown of what we did on this project. Let's start from the bottom. We've got German portal axles, and you know that the new G-Wagon body comes with independent suspension. Everything is top-notch. Adaptive shocks, no errors. It rides smoothly. We even tested it at 160 kilometers per hour, although technically you're not supposed to go that fast with new portals. We wanted to make sure that if something's going to break, it happens with us, not our client, because he has a long drive home. And now a quick overview of the tuning we added. There's a matte black lip with LEDs under the bumper. We painted everything nicely. The hood has a carbon fiber cover from our company, fitted perfectly, just the way you like it. I'll show you the details in a bit, so stay tuned. We also installed a carbon fiber roof spoiler from our company, which we connected with no extra buttons. Everything works just like factory. If you're wondering how those lights work and whether the roof spoiler actually provides good lighting, I can tell you for sure, I installed the exact same light bar on my own G-Wagon. The lighting is fantastic. It's somewhere between low and high beams. So it reaches a bit farther than low beams and is extremely bright. If you're driving in an area without any cars, you turn it on, and it's just perfect, and the visibility is fantastic. I highly recommend it, but make sure the lights are of high quality, like the ones we use. By the way, if you need anything for a new or old G-Wagon, carbon fiber parts, tuning, wheels, portal axles, body parts for 6x6 or pickups, feel free to reach out. I'll leave a link to our website in the description where you'll find prices and full descriptions of each product. We also offer carbon fiber fender flares from our company. The weave and fitment are flawless, just the way you like it. Smooth, polished, no gaps. Everything is shown in detail so you can judge for yourself. They closely resemble the G-Wagons we worked on back in 2015 to 2017. But let me tell you, these aren't just lookalikes. They're fully reworked. We took molds from both the front and rear fender flares because the fitment had to be perfect. Adjusting here, trimming there, and then making carbon fiber parts from the molds. It was a very complex job, which is one of the reasons why this project took a bit longer. Not just because of the carbon fiber fender flares, but for several other reasons as well. We also added carbon fiber mirror covers. The car has been fully de-chromed. The side steps are now matte black. We disassembled everything down to the smallest parts, sandblasted them, and then coated them with powder paint, the most durable kind available. I can tell you from my own experience, I've driven my G-Wagon for 4 years now, and there's not a single scratch or wear mark. I've seen people use regular acrylic paint, which lasts maybe 6 months or a year at most before it wears down to the metal. That looks terrible. We also installed matte black 8-bit turbo badges and repainted the moldings from front to back to make sure everything matches in the same color. We crafted the rear moldings entirely from scratch, and I think we nailed it. You're watching the footage right now, so be sure to let me know if everything fits perfectly and if there's no hint of shoddy craftsmanship. I aim for the build to look seamless, with no mismatched colors or shapes, just one cohesive design, and I believe we achieved that. Of course, we also installed electric side steps. For the new G-Wagon, they're designed much better than for the older models. In the old version, they stuck out a bit, which didn't look great. In the new model, they tuck right under the side rails. Let me open the door and show you. See? Not bad, right? Personally, I think it's a huge improvement over the older model. You're probably curious about the challenges we faced during this project. There are 5 key points, and I'll start with the first one. Connecting the third axle. To get a fully functional 6x6, I had initially planned to install the original middle axle from the older model, but to make a long story short, it just wasn't feasible. We tried various methods, spent a lot of time, and ultimately realized it wasn't going to work. So we had to come up with our own engineering solutions, and we finally conquered that problem. The axle works flawlessly now. It locks, drives at any speed, and there's no noise, squeaking, or vibrations. Now about the drive shafts, we faced an issue there as well. Modern cars mostly use CV joints instead of universal joints, and the CV joints have very limited movement. But since this vehicle is built for off-roading, we had to set it up so that even when the middle axle is fully raised and the rear one is lowered, the CV joints wouldn't bind. If they did, the drive shaft could come off at some speed or on rough terrain. It was a tough challenge, but we managed to get it right. As I've mentioned before, the first attempt is always the hardest. Everything was slow, difficult, and expensive. The second and third builds will definitely be faster and more efficient. In fact, I already have plans to improve the setup on the second build. Even though there were no issues with the third axle on this project, I believe we can do things a bit better next time. Once we installed all the parts underneath, we covered the license plates, as I had a feeling our client might give us away. I'll explain more about that later. The next issue was with the brakes. It sounds funny, but they gave us a lot of trouble. When we added the third axle and 2 additional brake calipers and extended the brake lines, the brake pedal dropped too low. In emergency stops, the pedal would almost hit the floor. Some people might say, "Hey, it's fine. The brakes work. That's all that matters." But I wasn't happy with it, especially since I've seen older G-Wagons without this issue. So, we decided to remove the 2 extra G63 calipers we had installed and replace them with smaller ones, also from Mercedes, to reduce the amount of brake fluid needed. After that, the pedal rose, which was a good sign. To compensate for the smaller calipers, we installed larger brake discs, which balanced everything out. I think we achieved a 1-to-1 match in braking power. In the end, we got amazing brakes. For a 6x6 vehicle that weighs over 3 tons, the braking performance is fantastic. Just incredible. The acceleration is insane because the engine delivers, and the brakes are just as impressive. I was really pleased with the final setup, but getting there took a lot of time and effort, and of course money too. The next issue we dealt with was the springs and suspension. Since this was the first time we were building a 6x6 with the new body style, the vehicle's height had to be just right. We replaced all 4 rear springs and the front ones with more reinforced versions. The rear springs are a bit softer, while the front ones are stiffer and stronger. When you extend the vehicle, the front end tends to sag, so we had to make sure the springs were stiff enough. I think we nailed the height on the 5th try. It took time and, of course, money, because I'm not a fan of cheap solutions, like adding rubber spacers to raise the vehicle. That just looks low quality, and it's not my style. As for wheel rubbing, I already touched on this briefly. The steering angle and wheel rotation range increase with the portal axles, and with the wider, taller wheels, they started rubbing the front wheel well. It was a complex problem to solve, but I won't reveal all the details just yet. I'll explain why a bit later. In the end, we figured it out after testing the wheels on various inclines and angles. We even had to make a custom part for the wheel well. It was tough, but we got it right. Another small difference between the new and old G-Wagon is the window. In the old version, the window was attached with a rubber seal, while in this model, it's glued in place. As I mentioned earlier, we completely de-chromed the vehicle, so all the steps, badges, and everything else was blacked out. We even welded in stainless steel tubing and painted it with matte black powder coating. It looks stunning. Feel free to comment on how you would have done it differently. Of course, as always, I show everything in detail on all the cars I work on, so you can really appreciate the quality. For those who can't visit us in person before ordering their build, I make sure to show every gap and joint we've worked on. I'll show you here too. Everything fits tightly and there's no scratching or unevenness. I take pride in that. We repainted the entire vehicle from top to bottom. In our case, you'll see everything is the same color and the same level of matte finish. The paint has a delicate, soft matte texture, and I'm very happy with how it turned out. You should definitely come see our projects in person before ordering something for yourself. It's worth seeing firsthand. Another change we made in this project was to the rear door. In the older G-Wagon, the door opened downward, which was very inconvenient. If you wanted to load or unload something from the bed, the door would push you back by about a meter, forcing you to reach awkwardly from the side. We solved that problem in this build. The door now opens differently. This was a factory door, but we modified it. The upper part is made of aluminum, and we added a carbon fiber overlay from our company. Everything fits perfectly and looks fantastic. I'll show you some footage, and you can judge for yourself. The camera is fully operational, and everything looks great. The door opens smoothly on a gas strut, and we lined the inside with aluminum, painted with Raptor as per the client's request. This combination makes the rear bed much more convenient to use. Let me show you what's inside. It's pretty standard, but there's no wooden floor panel, because the client preferred the design found in the newer, more expensive models, the ones that cost around $1.5 million. We replicated a similar approach when we recently built a pickup truck. I can't mention the full name of that model, but I think you understand what I'm referring to. If you don't know the story, head over to my Instagram, where I explained everything in detail after a well-known company, which I'll call Barbos, had some issues with me. You'll find the link to my Instagram here. So everything inside is painted with Raptor, smooth and neat. The rear partition is something I've talked about a few times. Its design is quite complex. This is what the original partition looks like. It's very challenging to sand and paint because of all the tricky corners and curves. But we managed it. The board is perfectly straight with even gaps. If you notice the holes, they're all fitted with stainless steel screws, ensuring durability. I'm confident it will last for years, as all our clients' builds have. I maintain friendly relations with all my clients and regularly check if everything is functioning well. So far, everyone's happy. Now let's move on to one of the most challenging aspects of this build, the third axle drive system. We connected all 3 drive axles with full locking functionality. We've tested it and everything runs perfectly. No whining, vibrations, or issues. I won't go into too much detail here because, as you can imagine, I don't want to help potential competitors who might badmouth us later. So I've decided to keep certain details and difficulties to myself. I hope you understand. That said, we managed to get everything working perfectly, and I think our client will be pleased. Let me quickly show you how it works. We lifted the vehicle to demonstrate the system in action. This is the new G63 we converted into a 6x6. All 3 axles are fully driven, and the locks engage without a hitch. It's simple to operate. You lock the center differential, engage the rear axle locks, and everything is good to go, as you can see when the car is lifted on the jacks. I can tell you this was extremely challenging. The first time is always the hardest. But now that we've done it, the next builds will go much faster. As for the interior, everything is pretty much stock. There isn't much to change because the G63 already comes with a top-of-the-line interior. The only modifications we made were installing a Starlight headliner and custom floor mats with red trim, which the client requested. I'm not sure what the red trim was meant to match. Maybe the wheels or brake calipers. But if the seats had red stitching, it would have made more sense. Still, that's what the client wanted, and we delivered. The entire interior has been detailed and cleaned. It smells fresh, just like a new car. Let's take a look inside. Behind the rear seats, there's a bit of space, but it houses all the vehicle's electronics, battery, fuse blocks, relays, and such. We, of course, covered everything up. Let me open the seat and show you how it looks. Here's our little compartment with a ventilation window. You can even place something on top of it. Everything was done very neatly before us too, and we can reupholster everything to any color scheme you want. Orange, yellow, turquoise, or whatever else you prefer. We can reupholster the dashboard, the headliner, and do any custom tuning you need, even replicating designs from photos. Now let me tell you about the driving experience. Driving this 6x6 G63 in the new body is truly something special. If you compare it with the older 6x6 G63, you'll notice that the new one is slightly stiffer, but only by a small margin. I'm not quite sure why, since we use the same rear springs as in the older models. The only difference might be the adaptive shock absorbers, which could explain the stiffness. Even with everything set to comfort mode, the ride feels firmer, but there are no strange noises, whining, or anything like that. The only sound comes from the 6 aggressive tires, which hum just a little. You might pick up on it, but it's really minor. The brakes are fantastic, the transmission shifts perfectly, and the steering is precise. We tested it extensively on the highway, driving at speeds of 120, 140, and 160 kilometers per hour for about 50 kilometers in one direction. We do this to ensure that if anything is going to leak or break, it happens with us, not the client. After all, the client has to drive thousands of kilometers to the port and then ship the vehicle to the US. So we do thorough test drives to ensure everything's perfect. My recommendation to the client would be to drive home at around 120 to 140 kilometers per hour for the first couple of thousand kilometers. This allows the portal axles to break in properly. After about 2,000 or 3,000 kilometers, the oils in the portals should be changed, and after that, the car will be ready for anything. The new G63 in this body is an exceptional car. I love everything about it, from the handling to the engine. It's faster and more dynamic than the older models. I could go on for hours listing all the improvements. The 6x6 conversion looks amazing, and it's much better than the older body style. The old one was narrower by about 10 to 12 centimeters, and it was quite noticeable. This new version is a beast. The rear design is also much more refined. The older NG class had a flat, boxy rear, while the new body has a slight curve to it, which gives it a much more elegant and modern look. You'll see for yourself in the shots I took, and you can let me know your thoughts in the comments. When it comes to craftsmanship, I'm proud of what we do. I encourage all my clients, especially those thinking of building a G-Wagon, to come visit us and see the work in person. Photos and stories are one thing, but seeing the car in real life is completely different. Custom builds are incredibly complex, and after doing this for more than 16 or 17 years, I'd never recommend committing to a project without seeing the vehicle in person first. One of our clients from the US did just that. He came to see the V12 G65 and the V12 6x6 we built, drove a few thousand kilometers just to check them out, and only then decided to proceed with his own G-Wagon conversion. That's the right approach. Another important step is to drive the car. Things like misaligned drive shafts, issues with the transfer case, or steering pulling to one side can only be caught on a test drive. These are critical things that can't be overlooked. And finally, the exhaust. Oh, the exhaust is just a masterpiece. We have it set to Sport Plus mode, and it even crackles. It's an Akrapovich system, and it sounds absolutely fantastic. Just incredible. But honestly, the hardest part of this entire project was finding common ground with our client. Yes, it does sound funny, but in my 17 years, this is probably the second client with whom it's been so difficult to work. I don't have anything bad to say about the client. We're all different, and everyone has their own approach to work, clients, and communication. But the thing is, everything went off track from the very beginning. Let me give you a short version so you understand. Initially, he called us, we talked, and then he went to America to see the V12 bi-turbo we built for a G65 6x6. He went, saw it, seemed to like everything, and sent a deposit saying he was ready to proceed. He got in the queue, but after a month or two, he called and said, "I'm not going to do it, return my deposit." I was like, "What? What happened?" He just said, "I don't want to do it, give me my money back." Then after 2 or 3 days, he calls again, "Sanya, I've changed my mind, let's do it. Everything is great. I'll be making a 4x4 from the new G63 2022 model." You know, a 4x4 can be done quickly if you have all the parts. So I told him, let's order the portals, tires, wheels, and have everything ready. We'll measure the fender flares from the old model and adjust them if necessary. It'll go quickly if we have everything. He agreed, but in the end, we didn't order anything because no payment was made. He eventually brought the car and gave us money to buy everything we needed for the project. Of course, this took a lot of time, around a month and a half to 2 months, to get everything from different parts of the world. The wheels were from one place, the tires from another, and the portals, as you know, we buy in Germany. So nearly 2 months just flew by. When we finally finished the 4x4 project, you saw the videos, it turned out really cool. I get a message in Viber. Sanya, let's do 6x6, written in Ukrainian. Sanya, robimo 6 na 6. I was shocked. I thought, what do you mean? We've already done the 4x4, spent all this time and effort. It was a very hard work, for example, to make a matrix, and this also money spending. It is temporary fiberglass, but we plan to make a matrix and make a carbon part. Everything is aligned perfectly as we love. But it was an interesting challenge for me since it was something new, and I didn't want to get stuck just doing old G-Wagons. So I agreed, and we started building the 6x6. But it wasn't easy either. Decisions were constantly changing. Should we install this part or not? Install overlay or not? But we already crafted it. Should we add the lip? No. We've already bought original LED lights. Maybe we shouldn't use them after all. This was happening with almost every part. For example, the Starry Sky headliner. We had already installed the windshield since the headliner goes in through the front because there are no tailgate. And then the client says, let's do the Starry Sky for sure. So we had to remove the windshield, install the Starry Sky, and put it all back together again. The same thing happened with the soundproofing. The car was almost ready, we'd started cleaning it, and he asks, did you do the soundproofing? I say, no, it wasn't in the plan. He replies, do it now. So we had to take everything apart again to install it. All these changes took so much unnecessary time we could have spent on the next project. These moments really exhausted us. Honestly, I was scared to open Viber. Every time Alex, that's the client's name, sent me a message, I was afraid to read it because I knew it meant we'd have to take another step back and redo something.
First glance, they'll never save the lessons for you. Hey, don't call me up. I know you know what you did, so I'm turning the radio up. Don't wanna hear it's too late for apologize. Lately I've realized that what goes around comes back around.
In the end, we ended up having a fallout with the client. Although maybe that's not the right way to put it. We didn't exactly have a fight. He simply betrayed us. He would smile at me in the shop, chatting in a friendly way, because with all our clients, we always maintain friendly relationships. I could call any of them, even from projects I did 3, 5, or 10 years ago, just to check in, say hi, maybe even visit, grab some tea, that kind of thing. But with this client, it turned out differently. I started to sense something was off when he began trying to figure out how we connected the middle axle and what exactly we installed. I realized what was going on. For more than 6 months, another group of guys has been building a similar project, either for themselves or someone else, I'm not sure. So they reached out to our client, trying to get him to extract information from us. I started suspecting it, and of course, I made sure to cover all our tracks. I painted over all the numbers so it wasn't visible what we installed. I even applied some undercoating to hide which components were used. I took precautions because it would have been really unpleasant if those guys who once spoke so negatively about us found out how we did it. My client Alex had told me when he first brought the car that these guys were actively trying to convince him not to come to us. They were telling him, "Come to us, we'll do it faster, cheaper, and better than Sanya's Jeep monsters." When I heard that, it made me feel bad. I didn't even know who they were, so I asked Alex, "Have they ever done any work for you?" He said, "No, they just wanted to use me as a learning experience, and that's why I didn't want to go to them. I don't want to be someone's guinea pig." These were his own words. And he also mentioned that the owner of that shop doesn't even work there himself. He's always traveling and doesn't really know what's going on. Alex was worried that if the team walked out on him, no one would finish his car. That's why he chose to come to us. Honestly, I was pretty nervous about doing this first build on a brand new G63 body, even with 17 years of experience. It was still stressful. We won in the end. We built the 4x4 first and then extended it into the 6x6. But even with all those years of experience, I was worried about this project. And now, let me tell you how it all ended. When my client came to pick up the car, he was all hugs, brought a gift saying, Sanya, everything is awesome. I really like it." He drove off happy, but the very next day, I get a call telling me that the same guys are already crawling under the car, taking photos and videos of everything we did. All I did was send an SMS to Alex saying, "Why did you do this to us? This is betrayal." He started replying, No, you misunderstood. It's not like that." But he forgot that I have my own audience, my own followers, and they had already told me who was underneath the car, what they were looking at, and what they were talking about. That's how my client betrayed us. It was extremely unpleasant, very unpleasant. When I found out that our project was taken to the shop by those guys who wanted to sneak a peek at how we did everything, I started to worry deep down. They could easily mess with us, like draining the oil from the transfer case, and then our client would drive off, and after a few kilometers, the vehicle could just seize up. And of course, everyone would blame us for it. But I really hope our client understands that such a thing could happen and didn't leave the car unattended. As for the guys who saw how we connected the third axle, there's probably no question there, since we all look for insights. After all, we also looked at how the Mercedes manufacturer did it and followed suit. But the most painful part of all this is that our client betrayed us, hypocritically. He was hugging us today, smiling, but the next day he was doing exactly what we talked about, the very things he promised he'd never do. That's why I named this project Hypocrisy. However, our client had significant engine problems, cylinder scoring, and other issues. These engines are very sensitive to improper use. If he pushed it hard on cold oil without warming it up, that's not surprising. He had an Akrapovic exhaust system, and the front tires were bald on the edges because the front lifts and spins, causing the tires to wear unevenly. I noticed immediately. When I saw the scoring in one cylinder, it was severe, and in another, it was minimal. The spark plugs were blackened, and I'll attach the photos. Since our client was in a rush to get to some point in western Ukraine the next day, he urgently asked us to help. We scrambled to address his issues. He mentioned he was experiencing misfires, so he said, "Let's replace all the spark plugs and coils to tackle the problem directly instead of searching for the cause piecemeal. But that costs money." As for the fuel pump, I strongly insisted that it didn't need replacing because during the first start with an empty tank, there were issues. When the lines were disconnected, the first reserve usually shows errors in the fuel pump. He wanted to replace the pump, which costs about $200 or $300. But the point is, we got everything done in one day. It was challenging. We worked at night, quickly ran out during the day to buy parts, and had to go to Kiev to get them. We did an endoscopy and saw all these unpleasant issues during the diagnostics. We worked through the night and had the car ready by morning, and our client left without even asking how much he owed us. I thought it was a nice gesture from our company. Let's make him happy. But now, after our client's actions, I've realized it's time to issue an invoice. Given that our country has been at war for 3 years, we have a tradition. From every car project we finish, we give back to the armed forces of Ukraine. We buy essential supplies for our guys, particularly those we know, and then pass them on. So, I decided that this amount, which our client will definitely pay, will go to our guys. So that's the situation, guys. It's all very unpleasant. We didn't really argue. I just stopped answering his calls and told him the door was closed for him. We would never service him again. Anyway, the video's coming to an end, and this is how it turned out. If you're wondering why I'm telling you all this, it's simply to protect myself. About a week after our mini falling out, he was out at a nice restaurant and at 11 p.m. started messaging me all sorts of not-so-nice things. I'm the kind of person who doesn't tolerate that, so I just blocked him. But the next day I realized he started spreading some nasty rumors about us. It's all untrue and unfair. I just wanted to tell the story as it really happened because his friends and acquaintances began asking what had happened between us. But he didn't tell them how he behaved in this situation. I want everyone to know we're not bad people who block clients and don't talk to them for no reason. Also, I want to add to this video that the new 6x6 is actually softer than the old one. Earlier, I mentioned it was a bit stiffer, but that's not the case. The new G-Wagon needs its tires inflated to 3 atmospheres. Otherwise, the tire pressure warning light stays on. However, with these tires, 3 atmospheres is quite a lot, which makes it feel a bit stiffer. Through reprogramming with a very skilled electrician, we managed to eliminate that warning. Now we can inflate the tires to 2 atmospheres, and this vehicle drives perfectly. I really liked it. In the end, we reprogrammed that feature, and with our powerful electrician on board, we have no more tire pressure errors. This is how our project turned out. We spent a lot of time and precious hours that could have gone into other projects. I won't even mention the earnings from this project, but whatever happens, it makes us stronger, smarter, and better. We gain valuable experience and we move forward. Glory to Ukraine and glory to our armed forces. Bye, guys.